Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of the Imaginary Movie Podcast, a podcast where we watch a movie and then we bicker about quotes from it. My name's David, and this is the worst podcast I've ever been on.
My name's Sam. Are we just not talking about any of the slavery that should be in this movie?
And I'm Ross. You are, without a doubt, the worst podcaster I've never heard of, Dave.
Brilliant.
Brilliant. So this week we watched, in the continuing run of movies that I wanted us to watch, we watched 2003's Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Can we get these fucking titles out of here? It's the first one. Pirates of the Caribbean is fine. That's enough.
Yeah, this wasn't like a Star Wars thing, was it, when it was retroactively added? Episode 4, even though it's the first one, but they didn't do that. This was from the beginning. So they obviously knew they're onto a winner, and they wanted to differentiate that a little bit.
Well, if that's the case, just number them. Number them.
Yeah, number one.
It'd be a
number
lot
two.
fucking easier to tell these movies apart.
Yeah,
Like,
I was trying to think, how many has there been? Because all you get is the names. I just want the figure. I don't want the names of the chapters.
Five. There's been five, I think. I have seen all of these movies. Another podcast I listened to did a month where they did all five of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Wow.
I know, but they have a Patreon. They're like a proper podcast. We hate movies, so like they're paid to put themselves through that.
Go listen to them. Stop what you're doing right now and go listen to them.
Honestly,
Link is in the description.
Funnier podcast, yeah. Although for like bearded fat white guys, I mean, it's fairly like it's all the same, isn't it?
I mean, we're completely different because we are three fat.
Yeah, there are only three of us, and Sam isn't fat, and Ross isn't even English.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Well, there we go. So thanks.
Anyway,
so thanks for listening.
Different.
These movies are confusing as fuck because you've got the first three, so like they're sort of like the main trilogy. I'm really glad trilogies have died. I'm sure you guys have got thoughts on that, but hold it just for a second. We do the trilogy, and then Keira Knightley and Orlando Bloom are like, "Fuck yous all, we're off." Fair. Obviously, Jeffrey Rush and Johnny Depp, they've got gambling debts or whatever. They come back for the fourth one and the fifth one. Now, one of these movies is called Salazar's Revenge. I think it's the fifth one. And I think the fourth one is about the Fountain of Youth. But I can't remember the name of it. But they've got different names in the US and here in Europe. So it's absolutely impossible. Remember with Encino Man being California Man over here? It's really, really difficult to know which of those two movies is which because, like, the names are not the same here as they are in the States. So, like, half of what's written about it is just incomprehensible.
Yeah. And this is just strengthening my argument for number them. Just number them.
Number them.
It's so passé, Ross. People are not interested in numbering movies anymore. Try and number those Terminator movies. There's a lot of fractions going on in there. There's a lot of, minus ones. It's too much. It's too difficult. Like you can't. Police Academy had it right. 1 to 9. They're all fucking ridiculous. But which one's
11?
which.
Can you imagine if they did that? Jesus Christ!
I think there are 9. Okay.
Can you imagine if they did this with the Avengers? They just didn't even bother. All these Ant-Man movies and all that shit. That's just Avengers 6. That's all it is. Just don't worry about it.
I mean,
you need a doctorate in the statistics to understand the makeup of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Sam.
So in case you're unclear as to which one we're watching the first one, The Curse of the Black Pearl, in which blacksmith Will Turner teams up with an eccentric pirate, Captain Jack Sparrow, to save his love, the governor's daughter, from Jack's former pirate allies, who are now undead. Which I think is a very good, succinct description. IMDb, good job.
It's a classic story of a 17-year-old girl being kidnapped and lusted after by everyone.
Yeah.
This is going to go against the grain on the sort of on the timeline you've probably got set up for this, Dave. But can we just quickly address at the beginning of the movie? You've got the Commodore, and he's talking to the young Elizabeth Swann, who's later played by Keira Knightley, but the child version, and he looks the same as he does then years later, and he's like, "Ooh, I want me some of that."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, How did this go unnoticed?
You've forgotten rule number 1 of history, Ross, which is don't not be a rich white man. Now, Jack Davenport's
Good
Commodore,
advice.
he's a rich white man. He's like,
A rich white man.
you know, he's busy becoming a richer white man, and he's like, say, that girl who I've known, she turned out hot. Maybe I can get some of that. That's pretty much the thought process.
Well, let's presume he's.
And you're right, Ross. It is creepy.
Let's presume he's 25 or so when he's the captain of the Norrington. This is played by Jack Davenport. 8 years later, I think, isn't it? After this, there's
how many years?
It is 8 years. It is 8
I
years.
think
So
Jack Davenport is the actor. I think is about 12, 13 years older than Keira Knightley-ish.
yeah.
And I think,
but we're talking about
we can
characters,
just
so
use,
this is
of course.
Yeah. So it's 8 years between them. So basically, you're looking at an 8-year gap before she turns 18 in the start of this movie. So yeah, it's again as I mentioned, there's lots of things that we're just kind of skirting over here. In the Port Royal, huge slave outpost, and
don't worry, Sam. There's nary a black face to be seen on the streets of Port Royal in this
There are
movie.
very few.
What I thought was,
and they're all pirates.
The governor is almost certainly a slaveholder. Like this charming, befuddled the old man, played by Jonathan Pryce, is absolutely owning slaves. Like there's just definitely that's happening. But we're not going to address that. This is a fun family swashbuckling film about pirates in the the funnest sense. So I guess we're not talking about that, and I guess that's okay.
But audience, I'm certain Sam's going to continue to talk about it for the next hour and a half. So don't you worry about that.
If you like uncomfortable topics, Sam's got you covered.
Absolutely. So just to put us a little bit of context, this movie came out in 2003. Did anyone see this in the cinema?
No.
I don't remember.
I remember getting the pirated video from my aunt.
Funny. I didn't either. I think I did see the Lord of the Rings film that this competed against, though. So I was definitely at 13 years old. I think I was that year. So you're at the cinema. What else are you doing? So I think I saw this movie a little bit later on, and then I did see at least one of the sequels in the cinema. I can't think for why. I have no excuses for that.
It's one of those films that's like, I think it's for me, it was one of those childhood staples, that you'd put on relatively regularly because it is a really fun movie. Like this is a really, really fun movie in the best sense of like blockbuster, where you've got a really solid cast, you've got a great idea. Everyone is working their arse off, whatever their respective role is in terms of the actors, set design, costumes in this. My God, all of it is working really, really well together, and you could kind of accuse it of being a little bit hollow, maybe a little bit kind of like it's just silly popcorn fun. But I think it does it
bloated, much like a corpse in the sea.
Yes,
I think. Sorry, go on.
Go.
I was going to say, but I think they get away with that because they're not trying to be, Citizen Kane. They're not trying to shine a light on the issues that you want to shine a light on, Sam. And it's just like you said, it's just there to be swashbuckling fun. It's check out pirates. People love pirates. Here's cool pirates.
Pirates are cool. Pirates would be really fun and light and really enjoyable if we took out all of the rape and the slavery. And you're like, let's take out all of the rape and the slavery and have that. And that's kind of what this movie is.
Don't forget the scurvy. There's not enough gummy teeth in this at all, and people dying.
Some of these people don't.
Well, one of the pirates, I don't know if he's named, but he's like one of the tough sort of minions of Barbossa, and he's sort of like he's the one who sort of like calls the shots. He's the one who gives Keira Knightley that massive backhand. He had some gnarly teeth. He was a cool dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Barbossa himself Geoffrey Rush looks like they're all wearing contacts. I don't know if you guys see this.
The yellow eyes.
Everyone in this movie is wearing contacts to like make their eyes darker, basically. And Geoffrey Rush has got like proper like jaundiced eye contact.
Yeah,
must have been so uncomfortable to wear.
Yeah. So let's get into the plot in a second, but I just want to talk about the writers because these guys are prolific. Like, my God.
Well,
Ted
pretty
Elliott.
much everyone in Hollywood at the time wrote a draft of this movie, didn't they, Sam?
Well, there was a few. But really, it's Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio. Ted Elliott principally, and he wrote Aladdin. He wrote The Mask of Zorro, Godzilla, Small
Aladdin.
Soldiers, The Road to El Dorado, Shrek, Treasure Planet, National Treasure, uncredited. Like if you just go on his Wikipedia page, there's loads and loads of stuff, and I think the story in this is where the strength comes from. Like there is a really really good story. There's lots of like world building that goes on to set us up to like just completely accept whatever is happening on the screen. Like we're not overthinking it, and you really could because it's silly and it's pirates and the whole thing. There's like a whole level of foundation here that I think is principally because this story is really really well written. I think that's a great place to start from with your movie, I think.
No, definitely. I think like the actual like the real steel bar that runs through the middle of that, Sam, is kind of the plot contrivance, and it's that we as the viewers, as well as the Elizabeth Swann character and the whatever Orlando Bloom's name is, we get to, and Johnny Depp to be fair, we get to like discover what the pirates are up to, and then be a part of that resolution. Like we get to be with them when they find out that the pirates, there's about the curse, about lifting the curse. Then there's all the really fun double dealing that, you know, like. And if you've seen the sequels to this, like this movie is remarkably restrained because they go full fucking crazy down in all of the sequels, and it's like every scene is Mexican standoffs with swords. It's just too much.
Yeah.
But this, they're really restrained. It's really fun. Like it's just quite well constructed. It does break our cardinal rule. This movie is 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, I didn't even cotton onto that until you pointed out. I was like, no, it can't be. This is 90 minutes. This is your average romp. Go through it. God damn it, Dave's right. It's like 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
it's probably the starting point for those 3-hour plus movies that we've come to expect almost from your big tentpole, you know, summer blockbuster like Avengers and stuff. Like,
I think it's not
like 3 hours long. It's an outrage. Like people want that level of detail.
It's a studio thing, I think, where this movie cost something like $150 million to make. It wasn't cheap by any stretch of the imagination. And I think there's a thing where the studio expects a long movie for that money. Like with 150 million, you could make an absolutely phenomenal 90-minute movie, even a 100-minute movie. You really, really could. And I do think there's room for improvement even in this movie in shortening it, because there is a bit of a lull. And my brain does this thing now because of the podcast where we hit minute 89 and I'm like, are we finished yet? Are we out? Am I done? Can I leave now?
Yeah, that's lunch. Wrap up.
Those bastards are going to hear about this on my podcast.
Exactly. So I think maybe the studio, Disney, were like, you know, we kind of want like a decent length movie for this money at the very least.
Let's start with the kind of prologue, I suppose. Well, let's start at the beginning. The prologue is when we get to meet like the kids' version of these characters. We get to meet Will Turner and Elizabeth Swann as children, and it's kind of like, again, it's just that whole thing of how do we start a movie like this, and it starts off many years before, because we kind of want to know quite a lot about these characters. And we've mentioned that we've got the Norrington there who's got a black wig on as opposed to a grey one, and we've got the dad. And
it's a wig.
It's a wig. We've got all these things, and obviously they've got this pirate medallion, which is, I don't think it's a MacGuffin necessarily, but it's a great piece of framing of like what we get to follow through literally the entire movie, right to the very end, right to the conclusion. We get to follow this piece of gold, and that would be the like, you know, the magic coin that's going to take us on this adventure. And then from there,
cool looking prop as well. Actually, we get a lot of like really close ups of this, and it's exactly what you think an Aztec coin would look like if you know nothing about it. It's proper like popcorn stuff. It really is.
And then from that point, we go forward in time to the modern day. I think it's like whatever it is, 18 years later, and
it's 8 years later.
8 years later, and this is where I want to diverge a little bit. Yeah, I want to diverge a little bit because I think we should maybe go into some of the different elements. We've said before that there's lots of like great work gone on from different areas of the production crew.
Yeah,
I'd like to talk about like the sets first, because there is some like fucking brilliant set design in this. From Port Royal to the cave, which I think we'll come to it in a minute, but I think it's one of the biggest sets ever built. This whole cave thing, it's got water in it, like the whole thing.
Wasn't it built on the Spruce Goose soundstage thing?
Yeah, possibly. We'll come to that in a minute, but maybe starting off with Port Royal, and then we can talk about the ships as well, because there's just like wonderful work of getting these ships to look so good, and that maybe will give us a chance to kick off. But yeah, like Port Royal it's kind of in my head, it's like the quintessential pirate town, like in the way that when you think about, the bar, the drunkards walking around, and the sword fighting, the whole thing is just brilliant. And then when you get to see all the cannons shooting the jail, like it just looks great. You completely believe all of it, and it's a good, it's just a great thing to have in your movie.
Yeah, I thought for a second you were talking about Tortuga, but I was like, oh, I don't remember the time.
I was going to say,
oh no, yeah, well, Tortuga as well. But let's talk about sets. What did we like about the sets in this? Because I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with everything you're saying about Port Royal, Sam. What stood out to me was that scene with Barbossa and Elizabeth Swann when he's on the ship and they're having this feast and he's trying to entice her with all these foods and eat vicariously through her, and then he's essentially given her the exposition behind the treasure. And as he's walking around the table, there's like a sort of wide shot, and you see him leaning against the tide that's moving the ship, and you see the lamps start to tilt, and you even see some of the candlesticks sliding along the table.
That's a clever shot. I think they're just on a gimbal. I think that's a set built on a gimbal, and it's just going like really slowly. But I can only imagine how many thousands of takes it must have taken to get that right.
How many times he tripped off his arse.
Fallen over again. Cut.
But yeah, that for me was like one of the things that was the most impressive.
It's a really good time to make a movie like this, because we've got good enough CGI that they can kind of like fill the gaps in here. And you are right, Sam, there's a lot of really practical sets here, because CGI in 2003 was pretty good, but it was also really expensive. So it was actually cheaper for them to build a lot of these buildings, and we'll talk about the ships in a second, and like build a lot of the other stuff and then kind of like patch it with CGI. Whereas nowadays it would just be a full CGI shot, and basically the whole movie would be filmed on a green screen, which even you can always tell. And there's that like uncanny valleys thing where you know it's not real. And this movie largely kind of like gets away without that for the most part.
Well, just to add on to that, Dave, because I'm glad that they did do that, where they did most of it with practical effects and then patch some of it up with CGI, because there's always time. CGI never stands the test of time. And if it was mostly CGI, I think we'd be looking back in this now. And if it was CGI, we'd have a very different opinion on that, because it never ages well.
No, not from this time. And obviously we don't know about now. But let's get into the ships, because the ships are cool. They built, and correct me if I'm spouting nonsense and incorrect stuff here. They built basically like the three main ships. So you've got the Black Pearl, you've got the Interceptor, which is the one that Jack and Orlando Bloom, Jack and William steal at the beginning, and you've got the what's the third one called? It's the sort of a Norrington ship. The Dauntless, yeah. So you got those three main ships, and two of them were basically the top deck and basically like the top bit and the rails and things. They built them on top of barges, and this is quite common when doing a ship scene, because then essentially a barge is a bit like a canal boat. It's quite low, so they can build stuff on top of it, but it'll still go in the water, and they can sail it around basically, and get the shots that way. And then they filled in the bottom portion of the ship, like underneath that railing is all CGI. But I think actually they do a really, really good job of marrying the two. And it means that when they're filming on the deck, it really feels real, because they're at sea. And that's a really again, lends itself so well to just feeling tangible.
Well,
yeah, that's incredible.
Let's think about Star Trek, when you've got, so we're being attacked, and then basically the director's shouting,
we've been hit.
And they'd even number it. They'd say, it's a 5. Okay, we all know what a 5 is. And, you don't need to do that when you're just putting these people at sea.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to do that. And obviously they're not going very fast necessarily, but you'll be able to to gimbal it or whatever else, but you can just put these people at sea. So
What's
there's
an actual rock, isn't there? And
all of that.
I think
yeah.
a barge can only go about 15 miles an hour. It's not very fast. But like you are right, Sam. There's just that, just by having actual like landscape in the background or seascape, I suppose. Apparently, they spent most of the editing for this movie was editing like modern sailboats out of the background of shots, because there's nowhere in the Caribbean that isn't just full of sailboats all the time.
Oh,
like they just had to shoot and like, we'll just have to edit them out in post.
I think it was mostly shot in St. Vincent because it was like, which is in the Caribbean, because it was the quietest place. Like this is the quietest islands we can find that still have the infrastructure available to keep 250 people fed and watered and all that stuff. So it's quite fun. The other one, the Interceptor, was I think they had a real ship that they repainted to get it kind of.
Like it was some sort of replica, wasn't it? Like a
replica of a lady,
replica.
A Lady Washington, which they sailed 40 days to sail it from Washington State all the way down to Caribbean. Which they fucking hell, guys, like that's just nuts. And I've been watching the making of the Lord of the Rings documentary. I'm going somewhere with this, and what strikes me.
Good shout telling us that.
Yeah, what really hits me is just how fucking complicated and like almost like visceral making a movie is, because it snows and then you're fucked. Like you're just fucked, or you need to get a shot, but you need all these people here, so you have to helicopter them in. And every time someone gets in a helicopter, it's fucking dangerous. Like there's all of these things, these realities that you kind of have to deal with when you're making a film. And sailing a boat. Hold on, sailing a boat from the north. Northwest of America all the way down to the fucking Caribbean just seems like one of those things you're like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
it's pretty mad. I have a personal anecdote about that, Sam. You're absolutely right. Like you don't think about it unless you do. When I was an extra in that film Tolkien, we were filming in Ellesmere Port and at the Canal Museum, and they had to close this bit of road, and like basically it was nighttime. And there was a horse and cart that would come up this road and would all be sort of milling around, and the actual actors would do a thing way out of our earshot or eye shot. And then they would reset, the horse would go back and they'd come back. But there was a car park down the road, so they couldn't close the road properly. They had to kind of like keep blocking it when they were shooting and then reopening it to let traffic go by. And obviously like these girls in a little Corsa, there were 17-year-olds, 3 or 4 of them. They came driving up the road, and the person driving obviously was like, "What the fuck is going on here?" And she nearly ploughed all the way. She ploughed through the set and nearly went into the canal, like horn blaring, slammed on the brakes. The horse went fucking mental, and we lost about an hour and a half. Like they had to pay all of us extras more because we had to stay till about 1 a.m.
Did she think she'd time travelled like back to the?
I'm not sure. Like I don't know.
Like
because there was a car park. So they must have parked in the car park and then driven up and obviously just been distracted and been like, I'm 17, I can't really drive.
Yeah. But to the point, it's like it's just so unpredictable. Something else, just to go back to a little bit to the Aztec tomb set, that took 5 months to build. It's all there, filled with water, as we said, 800 pieces of gold. And then it burned down. There was a massive fire that took.
How do you burn down something that's filled with water?
Filled with water, yeah.
I'll tell you, styrofoam, and so they lost £500,000 worth of damage, and obviously loads of time taken off that. So again, it's like these just things of like you don't see it on the screen because you're not there, but the actual drudging reality of filmmaking is just extraordinary. And this feels like one of those films that just would have been an absolute nightmare.
And that's outside of the realities of like this. So everyone's in so much makeup and so much like costume all the time. Yeah. There must be an absolute battalion of people running around after just your principal actors, making sure that the makeup's right for every shot, and the continuity is really good as well. I think in the Caribbean, in the Caribbean, it's going to be sweaty. Everyone's like, you don't have some shots where suddenly Johnny Depp's a lot cleaner than he was in the last shot. The continuity of the makeup and the costuming is really, really good. And you think that must have been so exhausting, like in comparison to another movie.
Yeah. Anything else on sets?
No,
No,
I think we
no.
can maybe talk
No.
a bit more about the cast or maybe the plot, and we'll just talk through. So we talked about the first bit, and it kind of like our setup, our intro is Port Royal, isn't the British Empire fabulous? And we have all of that. We meet Johnny Depp as Jack Sparrow. I have really mixed feelings about Johnny Depp as an
Really?
actor. I think
Oh,
generally,
right.
as an
Yeah.
actor, hear me out here. I think as a person, obviously, like let's get Johnny Depp some counselling at the very least, if not some prison time. But like that's personal preference, you know. Like as an actor, I think like obviously he's got some really, really like absolute wonderful performances, but he's always doing this like Edward Scissorhandy sort of like Jack Sparrowy, like mad. You know, when he played Willy Wonka in that new Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, like a totally just fucking like deranged lunatic, and that's fine. But you know, sometimes it's a bit much. But then actually, I don't know if you guys have seen Donnie Brasco.
I was about to say Donnie Brasco. Excellent
He's
movie.
really good in that, and he's playing it relatively straight. And it's like, wow, this guy can actually just put on a suit and not a load of white makeup, and he just a suit, and he's just a dude, and you're like, wow, this is a revelation. This guy can act.
Yeah.
And then you have movies like this, where Johnny Depp actually got his teeth capped in gold.
Fair play.
Because he's a fucking actually got his teeth capped in gold just for this role. Because he's a lunatic and he's doing this weird like I don't even know how to describe it. Like
It's Keith
Orlando
Richards.
Bloom does a great impression of it. He's like when he does
It's one of my favorite parts of the film because like again it's like a self-awareness of the movie makers have to understand that what Depp is doing is weird as hell. You know, it's weird as hell. The executives didn't like it at all. Like they were fucking terrified of this being just like what is that guy doing? Who is he and what is he doing? Because we don't like it. But you have to say, as much as Depp is, you know, as an individual, is a total arsehole, this performance is great. It's really good. I think it lifts the movie in a way.
It's exactly what this movie needs. It's exactly what they need tonally because, like, just to go to a bit of film history here, like, obviously, the pirate movie like genre was really big in like the 50s and the 60s, like huge, like big swashbuckling sort of like Errol Flynn led pirate movies. Exactly. The sort of thing you think of. But then they're obviously like in comparison to other cinema quite expensive to make, and then it gets tired. And then we don't really have like a lot of pirate movies outside of kids' movies until this. So obviously they're trying to ape the 60s and the 50s and things. So, but you've already got the Will Turner character, who's kind of like your like traditional good-looking leading man who has got all the emotional expression of a block of teak. I know, but that's fine. But I think initially they wanted the Johnny Depp character, this Jack Sparrow character, to be very like that as well. To be very like, oh, he's just a pirate, and it was like that would make this movie so different if it was like a really straight-laced like buddy cop movie between these two like handsome but not particularly emotive men. So having Jack Sparrow be a silly, like mad, like delusional, crazy, like doing his overacting funny thing, it just lends like a bit of humor throughout that makes this feel much more like a caper.
The introduction that I think is one of the best movie introductions possibly of all filmmaking, like the way that you see him coming through, you know, he's getting the water at the back, it's all going wrong, and then we get this wonderful shot of him on the top of, top of the crow's in his little ship as the ship is sinking into the water. Like that is amazing because number one, it's cool. Number two, it tells you everything you kind of need to know about this character, that he's like resourceful and he's cool, but he's also a bit weird. And like he's fucked up in some way to get to this.
He's flamboyant, and he's this guy is like high on his own supply. He's like, I am the fucking best, and you kind of know that from this. Like he's just
I remember
doing his thing.
I remember watching this and for the first time, and I was pretty sure that it was going to be sort of revealed that it was his time on the island that sent him doolally. You know, I thought it was good. That was good, but no, he's just been like that the whole time.
Yeah,
because he's just a weird dude. But yeah, I remember thinking, oh, it's like the sun has fucking fried his brain or something.
Yeah, and it works because
Go on.
so it works because the other characters he gets to play off against are all pretty straight laced. And it's kind of like a spectrum, isn't it? You've got Norrington, who is the straightest straight laced. I'm just outrageous. Like I love his. Jack Davenport has this great delivery, where he's able to just like this line. I'm trying to think of a single line that he says, but it's so cutting, and just wonderfully placed. So you've got him on one side, you've got Jack Sparrow on the other, and then in the middle you've got Will Turner, played by Orlando Bloom, who's able to kind of like bring quite a lot of levity, because like I think the film and his performance again is quite self-aware in that he's pretending to be the hero, but he's not really the hero. You know what I mean? Like Jack Sparrow is the main one, and we kind of get, I think, Orlando Bloom's ability to act is complimented, and that is not a compliment I'm giving him, if that makes sense.
I know
it's a well-written character, because and I think the benefit of that is having him be relatively like Keira Knightley. He's relatively quite young, and like the character, I mean, not the actor. Like, he's fresh-faced. He doesn't know a lot. He's quite naive in a lot of ways. But he's also a big, like, physically imposing man. So there's that. But like the movie does quite well with that, because Jack Sparrow is constantly like, he always has the upper hand with Will Turner because he's more worldly. He knows more, and do you know what I mean? And Will Turner can't. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
well, no, not at all.
I feel Ross has got something against Orlando Bloom here that we're gonna hear.
Eating me up inside. Sam.
Come on.
I just say it may be controversial, but I just think he had a really.
Orlando Bloom is an amazing actor.
I think he had a really easy job in this. Do you know what I mean? Because
totally, Ross.
You've got to play it straight, and you've got the Jack. So you got the Jack Sparrow character doing that, and so all you got to do is show up. Do you know what I mean? And then wonderful. Oh, well done.
I'm not sure.
I think the best thing is that, and it's telling that the best thing I remember about Orlando Bloom's performance by Pirates of the Caribbean was his performance in the series Extras. Have you guys ever watched that?
Yes.
So the Orlando Bloom episode, and basically it's like the Orlando Bloom character in Extras has this sort of like fixation and like or jealousy of Johnny Depp. It's like, oh, Willy Wonka, Johnny Wanker. He's like, and he was talking about like, when we were on the set of Pirates of the Caribbean, and it's like me and Keira Knightley did a kiss, and everyone was like, oh, that was so good. And Keira Knightley, she wanted me to kiss me again. I was like, I know what you're after. I was like, why don't you kiss Johnny Depp? She's like, don't make me sick. And it's just like comes out of nowhere. It's the best performance I've seen him do.
Yeah,
but was Extras is amazing. You are right. However, just on Orlando Bloom, and we should move on. I think, like, I'm not sure how much of his character being written in this movie is like, right, we've got Orlando Bloom. Like, I think he's an okay actor. Like, generally, I think given the right circumstances, he can do really well. Like in this, and in a lot of other stuff, he's really shit because he's got a really like hard ceiling.
It's elves or pirates. That's what he can do.
I'm glad it was Sam. I'm glad you said that because what's the name of that elf character he plays?
Yeah, Legolas. Yeah.
You've not seen the movies.
I thought it was Legolas. I couldn't remember. But so that's what I was thinking. From my memory of watching that movie and falling asleep, I was trying to think like, what's the difference? I know what's the difference between Will Turner and Legolas.
Legolas has long hair.
And the ears, right?
Hair.
But the ears, long ears.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about. Let's do Lord of the Rings.
Elf facts with Ross.
We'll do Lord of the Rings one day. Let's talk Keira Knightley, and then let's maybe advance the plot a little bit on our timeline. Keira Knightley was 17 when she made this movie, which I think is pretty amazing. Like, just let's all take a moment to imagine being 17. And
the movie she made before this, I don't know if you guys have seen it, is Bend It Like Beckham.
Yeah.
Was the big movie she made before this. And in that movie, I swear to God, she's like 12 years old. Like, it's quite mad. And she was in Phantom Menace, obviously, in 2001. She was in Phantom Menace as... whenever that fucking movie came out. Huh? She was the like decoy queen.
Padme.
In
Christ.
In Phantom Menace. But she was in Bend It Like Beckham, which is a very different movie, but like she's quite obviously playing a child. And then
But
like
in this,
2 years later, she's like, "Oh, look at this sexy woman," because Hollywood. But this is
in
kind of her
this-
mainstream worldwide breakthrough, isn't it?
Yeah, and in this, you're 17. You've flown all the way down to the Caribbean. Don't know if her parents are with her or not. I'm not sure. But even at 17, like, there's a lot of work to do just to like the confidence, to be able to like deliver this type of performance when she does have to be like she's played to be really sexy as well.
Yes.
And she's 17 years old, which is a bit strange, but either way. And
Hollywood.
yeah. She's also got to be pretty punchy, and she's got to hold her own against some really like accomplished actors.
You're
And
in a room with
Orlando
Jeffrey
Bloom.
And
Rush,
Orlando
and you
Bloom.
have to argue with him.
Yeah, she has to like, Jeffrey Rush in his makeup and all this. But the whole, I think this is a really good performance. And I'm trying to think of a film that I've seen Keira Knightley in, and thought, yeah, but there's none. Like, I think she's a really, really good actor who is able to like to hold her own against all of the conditions that she's in, and she's 17 years old. Like, I think that's really impressive.
I
she's
think
very
I would
talented
agree.
as well.
I think she's good in this, and like she's asked to do quite a lot as an actor. Like you said, she's kind of at the center of all of this, and she's not quite damseled, I don't think. And I should explain that terminology. Obviously, not for you, Ross, but for Sam.
Of course.
Like damseled is in movies, women quite frequently get what we call damseled, which is like at a certain point they'll be kidnapped, or basically any agency they might have is removed because they're a woman, and for basically they are put somewhere then to be rescued by the man. And Keira Knightley in this, to the credit of the writers, like does have some agency in the later part of this movie to like affect change herself, which is quite cool to see.
Yeah.
And I think Keira Knightley does a good job of being like, "Are you fucking joking? No, we're going to go and do this," which is nice.
And that does increase as well. Like, because I've only seen the first three, but that does increase with the subsequent movies then as well, because she's a bit more of a badass than the following movies.
Yeah, she's like one of the main pirates basically in the next
she
two. I
has her own
think.
ship. Yeah.
Spoilers for these movies from 15 years ago. So we have that. If we're talking cast, let's talk about Jeffrey Rush now, and I can gush now. He's my favourite bit of this movie. He's my favourite bit of all of these movies. I love the makeup. I love the accent. I love the
Costume.
menace. The menace in his voice in this. And like the authority as well. Ross and I bickered about our opening like joke in the episode. What the biggest trailer line is like is
You better start believing in ghost stories, Miss Turner. You're in one.
"You're in one," which I just. But it's one of those things.
Just so you know, Dave, I got it out first.
I know, I thought I waited because I was like, I'll let him say it, because otherwise he'll be at me for saying the line.
Let's let the one with acting experience deliver that one. I think, shall we? Yeah.
Is that me
That's
or
you,
Ross?
You were an extra.
I was in a film.
Yeah. You were paid just to show up, Dave. I was paid to
supporting
act.
artist.
Acting. Yeah.
It is one of those performances that like. I always like your phrase, Dave. Chewing the scenery. He's not chewing it. He has swallowed it all. Like, it's gone. He has grabbed the pieces of polystyrene from that cave, and he's just like he's going for it.
Yeah.
And
those apples, plastic.
I'll have it all. And I think it kind of like his performance really, for me, sums up a lot of this movie, in that you've got this great casting choice, you've got this brilliant direction to say like, Jeffrey, more. I was like, more? Really? More. Do it now. And then he turns it up to like 14, and he's more, do it again. You've got this costume which is just amazing. Like there's little things you notice, like his rings and
for this tropical climate, doesn't it? He's wearing like an overcoat the entire movie.
Well, to be fair, he doesn't feel.
Nails
Oh my
it.
God,
Maybe
the smell.
He nails it.
Yeah.
There's one of the best sort of scenes. One of my favorite scenes rather was when Elizabeth Swann is sort of taken aboard, and she basically asks them to stop. She says like, cease the hostility. What? Parley, yes, parley. Yeah. And she says something like, cease these hostilities, immediately. And he says like, we're nothing but humble pirates, And she's like, oh, stop and leave. And he's like, I'm disinclined to acquiesce your request. That means no. I was like, just
He's
it's
shitty.
brilliant.
He's shit eating, and he is exactly as cartoony as Johnny Depp, but like at the other end of the spectrum.
Yes,
Like
yes.
he's playing this like he's the Joker from Batman. Like
He's
he is
amazing, yeah.
absolutely as unhinged, and
But I think
kind
you
of
said
love
as
it.
well, Dave. I think you said as well, Dave. Earlier tonight that he's sort of like he apes that sort of the traditional pirate thing, but it doesn't feel. I don't know what the word is, but it doesn't feel cheap or cheated. He brings it to life. And
He
it's
owns
so
and
entertaining
lives
to
in
watch.
that role. He accepts what
Yeah.
he's doing. He believes it and he sells it. And that's kind of like, that's maybe the trickiest job in this movie is to kind of like, because he is the pirate straight man. Everyone else on the pirate spectrum is comic relief essentially.
Yeah.
And he's got to be like the, ooh, we are going to do this evil thing guy.
big
Do you know what it
bad.
is?
And he does it really well.
It's
Go on,
not
Sam.
it's not derivative, so it's new. It's a new thing. He manages to bring like a new characterization to one of the oldest storybook characters there is, a pirate. Like, and that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Along with the direction as well to get him there. But the whole thing is
And he gets to be funny as well. He has some really funny
he's-
lines in
yeah.
this. The fight with Johnny Depp towards the end is like, on the one hand, you're like, oh, this is really well shot and really well choreographed. On the other, it's really fucking funny.
yeah, it's very funny. So in the story, then in the actual film, as we kind of we've gone through the bit of Tortuga, and we've got basically the Black Pearl is chasing away with the gold with Elizabeth, and they're trying to Will and Jack are trying to save the damsel, but not necessarily, as you say, completely damseled. And this is a good way to progress your story forward, isn't it? By just having a chase. Like, that's what they do. They just have this chase where the Interceptor on their ship, they've got Gibbs. I love Gibbs.
He's brilliant.
With his superstition. Oh, it's bad luck to have a woman on board, and all these other things. So we get this nice crew. We get Zoe Saldana, who is Star Trek and Guardians of the Galaxy fame. Like another. Oh, look,
Anna Maria.
2003.
Yeah, quite a small role in this though. Like I remember
Lots of
her being
speaking
in it
parts,
more,
to be
but
fair. But yeah,
I don't
she's
think
quite
she's
young.
in. Is she in the second one? I don't think she is.
No.
I can't remember.
That was something that stuck out to me as well. But I even said it to Amy when we were watching. I was like, you see her, and there's some like history between her. You get the impression there's some history between her and Johnny Depp, and they're like, oh, you're gonna get this ship, and she's on the ship, in the final scene. She gives him the hat and the jacket and all, and then that's her done. And just like I would have liked to have seen more of her.
Maybe she was busy. But what I thought back to, especially the bits when on the boat, I thought back to Muppets Treasure Island, and like there's points of this movie, Johnny Depp doing Orlando Bloom aping Johnny Depp doing the whole finger thing, and there's points in this movie where that's
the thumbnail for the video.
Thumbnail for YouTube. But there's points in this film where it's exactly as zany and wacky as Muppets Treasure Island, which that shouldn't
Wacky,
it
yeah.
shouldn't work. It shouldn't.
When Johnny
work.
Depp is telling Orlando Bloom that he roped a couple of sea turtles with rope he wove from his own back hair, and you're like, what am I watching? And but it's fine because the movie, I think, is the tone. I think is even throughout, and it's like so you can have something really funny like this, and then you can have like the zombie skeleton stuff later, and it's all fine, and you don't have any trouble accepting any of it.
Yeah, and that comes back to the writing, doesn't it? The two skeleton pirates who I can't remember their names. You know who they are.
Mackenzie Cook, and the other one.
Yes, and the other one, like them dressed up as women with their brollies. All of that thing is just.
And Mackenzie Cook is like,
he's amazing.
Yeah.
He is amazing.
He's so
all of that is
funny.
great. But that's the kind of like, we've talked about casting and some of the other production stuff. Just the ability to write this film and get the tone so perfectly all the way through, in that it's funny in moments, it's emotional and touching in others. It's full of action. Like it takes you on such a ride, get it? Because it's able to.
Come on, Sam.
Yeah, because it's able to deliver all of these different like tonal elements throughout the film. That's really hard to do. It's really hard to shift from action to comedy, back to action to love story, like to lost dads and all this stuff. Like it's really hard to do that.
This
and
is
they
why
manage-
the movie is 2.5 hours long. There's
Yes.
a lot.
Yeah.
And the sequels, or the two that you guys have probably seen, they suffer so badly from the same problems that this movie manages to bring together.
Let's talk about the
where
length now. Yeah.
you've got so many characters. This film has the audacity to get us to like the final battle. Like we're on the boss level, the boss fight level, and then we fuck off and we have to come back again. Like
Yeah.
we're here, we're having our finale at an hour and a half into the movie, and then I remember texting you guys and being like, it was last night, it was late, and I was tired, and I was like, oh god, this movie, I bet I've got like an hour left, and I was joking because there can't be more than 20 minutes left, and there was a whole hour left of the movie.
So you're talking about the first time they go to the Aztec cave, aren't you?
Yeah, so
Dropping
to
the gold
fill us in on the plot, Barbossa and the Black Pearl, they're at the cave to get Elizabeth's blood because they think that will basically break the curse. Let's not
'Cause
get
she
really
lied.
far into the nitty.
She lied.
Because
about
she
who was.
lied.
Yeah.
She lied because she thought if they knew she was the governor's daughter, they would
You're the governor's daughter. I always remember that line.
they would be like, "Oh, your dad owns all those slaves," and they would treat her worse for it.
Because they want those slaves. Because slavery is totally cool in 1740. That's why.
That's the voice clip there for advertising this.
If anyone
Slavery's cool.
wants to greenlight and fund Sam's 14-hour script for Pirates of the Caribbean, but with all the slavery and rape added back in, please get in touch with
And
him.
also fund his run for office.
He's not sure what office yet, but whatever. We'll see what's happening.
Yeah.
But we have that, so we're back. We're there, and then Johnny Depp and Will Turner have made some dodgy bargain where they're going to rescue her. Obviously, Johnny Depp betrays him, and then we have everyone leaves the final boss fight area without much being resolved, really, and we get like a nice split up of the main cast where Johnny Depp's back in prison with Barbossa. Will and Elizabeth go away again, and it's like a nice, fun sort of divergence where we get to see characters who haven't interacted thus far interact.
I think it's one of two things for that point there, because, like you, Dave, when I watched just for the first time, I thought, "Oh, we're culminating now. We're getting to the end. Everything's gonna, sort itself out." And no, you've got another hour yet. And I think that's, you could look at that in one of two ways. One, sort of like mixing it up a little bit, like changing the pace, because every movie up until most movies are 90 minutes, bad stuff happens, resolve, everyone goes home happy. So they could be doing, just trying to change it up. The other thing what you should sort of consider as well is when, Sam, you mentioned the other Avengers movies and stuff before, and that runs for maybe 2 hours, things like that. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because in those massive movies coming together, you've got a lot of big names, and you have to give each of them their due in terms of camera time, screen time, and proper lines and stuff. And with the number of actors you have here who are absolutely doing an incredible job, Jeffrey Rush, Johnny Depp, Keira Knightley, the guy who plays the Commodore and the father, and then you have Orlando Bloom who showed up as well. And then these
Was this an entire speech to get another dig in at Orlando Bloom?
But yeah, just to give everyone their due time, so it doesn't feel like, oh, it had that guy in it. Oh, don't remember them. Of course, I could be absolutely talking shit.
Possibly, I know what you mean, Ross. It's like it's very weighty, and like I said, the length is a symptom of like they wanted to do all of these things. But I think ultimately, like you're right, Sam. That I think it carries it off pretty well, and like it kind of earns that doubling back because they sink the other ship, and it's like the all is lost moment after that, and it kind of earns all of that because like you get like a better development of Rush and Depp's their rivalry, which again like is the best thing about all of these movies is the interplay between those two characters. You get more about Elizabeth Swann, you get even more backstory for Depp, while at the same time like Will gets to learn about his father, and we get all of this going on, but it's not like scene after scene where we're being told the history of these characters. It's kind of all happening in real time. I've just been doing, haven't I?
Yes, I'm. Well, no,
Did
but
I say
I'm gonna,
that?
No one's
Yeah.
attacking it here,
You're
Sam.
gonna
I was just
defend
trying
it.
to explain it.
No, but I'm going to defend. Because I don't think as long as it is, I don't think there's any problem at all with the pacing. I don't think at no point was I thinking, oh, I've got loads of, because I think the film manages, like, the series of events that happen all make sense. It's all linked nicely. Like, we go from Port Royal to Tortuga to we're on a bit of a boat moment, and then we kind of go back to another run. Then we're back on the boats again. Then we're on
It's a proper road movie in that way.
yeah, we're on
We
that
don't
desert
sit for very
island.
long.
With Swan and like, I think the pacing in this is probably the best thing about it. That's the thing for me that manages to elevate it from a 2.5 hour movie that I'm like, oh God, kill me, to. So I mean, the other example, and I'll say it because Return of the King is probably one of the best paced movies that there is.
Isn't
and
that
that's-
about 19 hours long?
It's three. No, it's more than 3 hours long. But I think that the pacing in that film is really, really good for its length. I'm not talking about the director's cut at all, because that's just dreadful. But like, for a 3 hour movie, it moves really, really well because it all makes sense. It's all connected. And this film does the same.
Snyder
thing.
Cut was done well as well in terms of pacing.
No, shut up, Ross. Obviously, you can go and die in a corner somewhere. Sam, I agree with you, and I think what it is that, like, it's much easier to do that in a movie where you move, where you're constantly moving around, and there's this, even though a lot of it takes place on the ship, and but because of the magic of cinema, like, a ship's a thing that moves, so it feels like we're going somewhere, even when we stood having a conversation on the ship. Like, it feels like the film is still moving, even when we stop dead to do exposition. And I think that really lends itself to this film feeling much more like a jaunt than it could.
Yeah, and last point on this, and then we should move. But I think Verbinski towards the end, because of the amount of time they had between, like, I think they only wrapped 4 months before release. And so Verbinski spent 18 hours a day editing,
Wow.
with his editor, and you just think, holy shit! Like, there's something about this that really, really, you can almost feel it. You can almost feel the 18-hour days to get to the point where you're able to bring all of these different things together, and like that to me is just amazing. It's amazing film craft to get to the point where you're able to bring all that and not be entirely incoherent, which is very, very easy to do.
Yeah. So we've kind of gone around the house on this. I'm not trying to end this at all. But what I want to talk about now, I want to talk about some of the fights in this film, because it's quite a fighty franchise. Like, in comparison to a lot of stuff we've done recently, we haven't really done like a properly fighty movie in a while. But this is like all the fight scenes are quite like, it's not good in the way that like a martial arts movie is good, because it is that kind of like, we're hitting our swords together and that's somehow fighting, which annoys me. But at the same time, like, and the one I'm going to refer to mostly is this like finishing fight when they're in the treasure boss level, and they're all fighting, and it's kind of like by having them all be undead zombies except Will Turner, like, you can have a lot more fun with the choreography than you would otherwise be able to have. So, like, the moment where someone runs Johnny Depp through, and he's like, oh, and he staggers back, and he's a zombie, and they're all like, the fuck? Like, it's a wonderful moment of levity, and it allows them to be like, two pirates who they've both been stabbed in the chest, so they just pull the swords out of their chest and they're fighting with those now. Like, it's all so silly, like, at a certain point, but I think it's planned out well enough, and it, like, the action is well paced enough that, like, you really are having a lot of fun with this, and there's a great amount of choreography going on at the same time as, like, a shit ton of CGI being properly put together.
Do you know what? I'm gonna go against you on that one a little bit, Dave. I will say that you're controversial.
Quick, let's clash swords together loudly like we're fighting.
On guard. I think what you're saying is true for one of the fight scenes, and that's I think one of the first fight scenes between Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom. and mostly because that was a panned out shot, and you could see the choreography, and you could see some some long cuts of interaction or combat or what have you. Most of the sort of combat shots then subsequent to that, it's all close up, quick shots, and it's. I have this problem with a lot of movies, that have combat in it, and it's where you can't really tell what's going on. You say, oh, he threw a punch and he threw a kick and stuff, and he slashed his sword and did that, but you don't actually see what the impact of either's attack or parry or counter is. You just say, oh, now he's doing this. Oh, now he's doing it back.
You do remember me saying it's not good, like a martial arts movie would be good.
No, but
it's not. But they're not going for that kind of thing, Ross. It's more popcorny. It's more like what's the word? What they're doing is intentional. Go on, Sam.
Yeah, because there's again through watching the Lord of the Rings stuff. Bob Anderson was the sword master on those movies and this movie.
Oh,
and Bob Anderson. I mean, if you Google him, he is like the guy in Hollywood who's been around so many of these kind of sword fight films, but also Star Wars. Like he's got 50 years old experience, and I think that his kind of like way of doing things is you train everyone. So everyone got training on this movie. They got weeks of training to understand how to use swords. Presumably Orlando Bloom was kind of like already good at it because he'd worked with him on Lord of the Rings, and so I do think like there's a lot of thought that's gone into this, and I think you do see that on the screen. I really like all of the sword fighting in this. I also think about some of the scenes where we get to see two boats attacking each other, and like the way that people swinging across and they're shooting cutlery at each other. Like all of this stuff is just really, really competently done. It's fun, and most importantly, you understand what's happening because it's really easy to kind of shoot things from a way that you don't really get what's going on, and the perspectives are weird and all that stuff. So
it's exactly what this sort of movie needs to do, which is all the fight scenes are somewhat tense, but ultimately absolutely nobody gets killed, and there's never really any stakes. Like even the crew of the Interceptor, like Johnny Depp's crew, none of them die. Like they all just get captured at the end. Obviously, Barbarossa's crew are all undead zombies, so none of them die up until the very end. So there's kind of like there's not a lot of weight to it, but that's fine because it makes the movie a lot lighter than if we were seeing people get viscerally killed quite so much as they would be doing in. Do you know what I mean? If this was just a bit more serious.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But good. It's a core. It's one of those core tenets of the film. Like the other things that we've been talking about, like the action being competent and being entertaining is absolutely vital, isn't it? So I think this is a good job all around for me on the action scenes.
Good. So things that we haven't talked about.
Well,
is there anything anyone particularly feels that we haven't talked about? Obviously, Ross, we can talk more about how you don't like Orlando Bloom.
I just don't think he's anything special.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe go back to the plot then and talk just a little bit in terms of like the last part of this movie, which is Jack trying to get the Black Pearl back, isn't it? And that's all of for him for Jack Sparrow. Like most of this movie is utterly irrelevant. Like he doesn't really care about Elizabeth. He doesn't really care. He doesn't care about Will particularly. None of the other things that all the characters are doing. He doesn't share any of their motivation. He just wants to get the ship back. And if that happens, and this guy gets to live, great. He's
so be it.
Which is fun because what I like is we don't really get like a moment of like a redeeming moment for Jack Sparrow. He kind of everything that he does is for his own purpose. Even the bit where he's helping Will and he throws the coin and everything. It's all there to kind of serve his aims, and I like that. I like that they don't have like a save the cat moment.
There is a little
Johnny
bit of
Depp,
redemption. I would disagree just a little bit, Sam. I think there is a bit of redemption for Johnny Depp in this. Not a lot, but definitely at the very end, it's kind of like you see the look exchange between him and Will, and yes, it's self-interest, but he's made this deal with Barbossa. He's like, oh, well, I take it you don't want me to kill kill the whelp, and he's like, "Oh no, by all means, kill away, kill away." And then he has the look with Will, and he's like, we're gonna have this guy. And there is kind of a moment there where he's like, he picks a side, and I wouldn't say it's a redemption as such because he's still going to go on and pirate and all of that. But you do have that moment where he like definitively picks a side, and it's with Elizabeth and Will, and like there is a certain amount of, he's one of the good guys then.
I disagree with you, Dave. I think Sam's right on this because while I'm not doing it to be argumentative, but everything you described, the series of events, yes, he's doing that, but it's not to get on their side. It's by taking Barbossa out of the equation, he gets his ship back. If it was them dying, that would get him his ship back. He'd probably go for that angle, but by doing what he did, that's the most likely way for him to get the Black Pearl.
I mean, if you think this is a logical character who thinks straight, then sure, yeah. Ultimately, I don't think that's massively worth like getting into. No. But Will and Elizabeth are definitely the good characters and the most stupid characters in this movie. Can we talk about the utter stupidity? The British Empire don't give a fuck if your daddy's the governor. If you break a pirate out of prison in this public setting, dead. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. What? So this is the end of the movie, isn't it? And like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to talk about it straight away. Orlando Bloom and his stupid hat with the.
You know what I thought? My first thought actually my first thought was, say Orlando Bloom would be pretty good casting for a D'Artagnan in the Three Musketeers film. Now he was
gone in for Three Musketeers.
He was in a Three Musketeers movie, but he didn't play D'Artagnan. So I was like,
damn it!
Yeah.
One thing I like about this is when he turns when they're surrounded by they're surrounded by the redcoats, and the feather goes in Johnny Depp's head, and he's like blowing it away. You're like, that's fucking hilarious, and I want to believe that was ad-libbed. I want to believe. I really doubt it was, but that's really fun. But yeah, I totally agree. Like, they just shoot these people, Norrington's like, I don't give a fuck. Execute them now.
All of these soldiers have guns. Nobody gets shot.
He takes the fact that this woman just leaves him, moments like as that. Not that they're getting married at the hanging, but they're pretty close to getting married, it looks like. And she's just like, sorry.
He's remarkably not upset that his child bride is rejecting him.
Not only am I leaving you, I'm leaving you for a blacksmith. Not only am I leaving for you for a blacksmith, I'm helping the blacksmith get a pirate to escape.
And not only that, the blacksmith can't even act that well.
And he's got a silly hat. Dickhead. So it's a fun ending. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, and he's all like, yeah, sure, all's fair in love and war, right?
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, and like they kind of have to do some work in the sequel to kind of like make it make sense. So obviously you guys probably haven't watched the sequel in a while, but again, I watched them a couple of months ago. In the sequel, basically, London sends somebody and they're like, no, Commodore Norrington, absolutely
he's
fucking
great,
not.
that guy.
Like, you are fired. Dickhead guy, East India Company guy. He's basically like, you're fired. How dare you let this guy go? Obviously, these people who helped this pirate escape, they're dead. Warrant's out. Like, are you fucking joking? It's a great, like, we're the British Empire. We'll fucking do what we like. It's all about the bottom line, and piracy is bad.
Yeah.
He's brilliant, though, isn't he? That evil.
He's very intimidating in like that very bureaucratic, intimidating kind of way. Yeah, Tom Hollander.
Beckett. Yeah, he's fantastic. I really like his performance in that. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that obviously when they made this first movie, there was no intention that this would be like a saga. This was the studio being really, really fucking nervous about all the money they put into this movie based on a theme park ride, which we haven't really mentioned, but I'm sure we will. Like, they're really nervous about this 150 million because like traditionally, if you make a movie based on a theme park ride, it's going to flop. There was talk of this movie when it was first written being a straight to video release because it's like at that level. And So obviously the ending is more of like and I quite like the ending in terms of the tone of like, and they all had many more adventures, because it's a good ending if this had been a one movie. And I think if there were no sequels, I think our conversation would be that this is maybe the best pirate movie ever made. Do you know what I mean? I think it's very different, but it's marred. It's marred by the sequels because they're so fucking long and bad and loud and bright, and it's Hollywood. We're going to have our cake and then we're going to fuck it as well.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Russ. Beautiful.
It's really.
Can I, before we conclude, I'd like to just take a little bit of a sidebar on some of the effects which we haven't talked about in this, because as much as we've got like explosions and stuff, the biggest element of this movie that's maybe a little bit different from your traditional pirate film is the kind of fantasy stuff where we've got these pirates turning into skeletons. Now, you can say a lot against, like, some of it looks a bit 2003. Like, you can kind of see it a little
quite
bit.
well, to be honest. But even the CGI.
I'm with you. And just to set this up a little bit, because there's some interesting stuff about how they do it. ILM did it, and they were fresh off, the Star Wars stuff. So they'd really had quite a lot of experience. There's also quite a lot of close-up shots in this where we literally get to see the transition of someone's face. They walk into the moon and it's just in their
Barbossa,
face, which is really difficult to do. You've got to have that. You've got to have that animation looking good by itself, but also you've got to link it up with the person's face, the actor's face. There's also lots of fight scenes which involve redcoats and pirates, and so what they had to do is they had to shoot them. So you've got Mackenzie Crook and a redcoat fighting each other, so they'd shoot it once and then they'd shoot it again with just the redcoats, and then they'd shoot it again with just the pirates, because they need to be able to have different layers that they can compass it up. Like the complexity of this, and I think it was like 600 effect shots or something, which is crazy amounts. And as you say, Ross, I think this holds up really well.
It does look good. I would say that the reason it holds up so well, again, is that restraint. Apart from the kind of like the final battle scene, I think the stuff in the cave works especially well. But I think that's because it's on a static set and it's much easier to get it right when it's. Do you know what I mean? When it's Johnny Depp and Barbossa and you'll notice there's only like 3 zombie pirates in that set when that's all going on, and it's all very intentional because they need to kind of like get that right, because it's the one that's going to be under the most scrutiny. I do think some of the initial scene where we meet the skeleton pirates with Elizabeth Swann on the ship is a little bit janky, just a little. And there's a couple, and basically any shot where there's loads of them, any shot where all of the skeleton pirates are there, it's a little bit like it's a mammoth task, and it's a bit janky.
I genuinely thought they were going to break out a song at that point. Just when you see like scrubbing and they're moving, listen
up, boys, this will be my only number.
I genuinely thought a shanty was going to break out. Genuinely.
My favourite effect shot is the bit where they're walking. Oh, I mean, it's great, isn't it? So how are we going to get to the ship? They fucking walk on the sea, on the bottom of the seabed.
Yeah, Johnny Depp's like, let's go to the ship and get to the boats. And he's like, take a walk, boys.
Take a walk,
and
boys.
Is this something you've done before? Boys. This is like execute Order 7.
Yeah, well, they
like
walk
Pat
underneath.
And Omega.
They walk underneath the boat, and then the boat's basically blocking out the moonlight. And then as they go past the boat, they all turn, and it's like, God damn it, ILM,
total trailer shot, by the way,
destroying it.
Yeah, little bit of pedant cast here. Sam, in that scene, you're describing where he's talking.
Welcome to Pedantcast.
But that scene where Barbossa,
I'd love to watch our audience numbers just like dive bomb when Ross does.
I don't give a shit. This isn't for them. This is for me. This is to prove how smart I am. But it's that iconic line that Jeffrey Rush says. You best start believing in ghost stories. And then as he
you're in one.
You're in one. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, how's he enunciating those words when he doesn't have lips?
Oh, for Christ's sake!
We have reached.
Ross Wizard did it.
I didn't say fresh take cast. I said pedant cast.
No, I'm saying we've reached new lows of pedantry. How does your brain even work that you consider that? Do you even think about that? What is wrong with you?
Logically. Logically.
I hope somebody
Anyway,
got
I
fired for
couldn't
that
give two
blunder.
fucks about that, Ross. Like, I think, as I said before, my suspension of disbelief in this movie was like really good. Actually, there wasn't a lot. It was more the. To be honest, I was more bothered, Ross, by the fact that Orlando Bloom and Johnny Depp managed to sail the ship somehow and then dock it, and I'm like, that takes way more than two people. Like,
Well-
even for a smaller boat than that. Don't well me.
Well, they do hang a lantern on it because they say they're like, all of you get off the boat when they land on there, and like, oh, you'll never do this with two people. And like, oh well, we'll figure it out. And then what they do is distract them with the Dauntless and say, actually, we want the Interceptor. I think they hang a lantern on that enough. I think
They
two people probably
do, but at the same time, it's like,
yeah.
Oh, thanks for getting us ready, guys. Well, that's great, but like,
Yeah.
changing
Isn't there other
sails
stuff to
and
do?
like, yeah, there's like all the stuff to do that takes more than two people.
What about
Maybe if these
catering?
two people were cyborgs who didn't need to sleep, maybe. But like, even on like a modern sailing boat, like a small sailing boat, you need at least a couple of people. Anyway,
we now conclude this week's episode of Pedantcast. Thank you. There
I
we go. We're
didn't
back.
know
Thank you,
if
everyone.
I was like, is Sam going to do the voice or is he going to cough? Oh, he's going to do the voice.
it's hard to tell.
We'll just cut this from the edit. It's fine. It's all good. So,
He
what have
always
we got left to
threatens
talk?
that.
Yeah, I always do. What have we got left to talk about? I'd like to talk about a large number. Would you like to hear what this large number is? I'm going to tell you anyway.
Is the amount of
80
slaves
something.
owned by this governor?
Yeah, it's 264,264,015 dollars, which is how much money this movie made. And like, of all the praise we've given it,
Remind me, Sam. That's a lot of money, obviously. I mean, not to us because we're podcast millionaires, but that's a lot of money,
Wait, you
Sam.
guys
But in
get paid?
2000, shit.
shush, move on.
in 2003, remind me what this grossed how much money compared to other movies that did better than this?
650 million, which, as you're hinting at, Dave, but put it at number 4 on the highest grossing films of 2003.
Isn't
which
that
is amazing.
crazy? Isn't that crazy? Like, I guess because cinema died 10 years ago, but like 2003 was peak. Streaming TV didn't exist. You were either going at home and watching whatever the fuck the BBC was putting in front of your face, or you would go to the cinema.
I'll give you a rundown. We've got Lord of the Rings at number 1 with 1.1 billion, Finding Nemo with 870 million, Matrix Reloaded at 730 million, and then this with 650. So like, it's amazing money, and I think overall this franchise has earned like 4.5 billion on a 1 billion production. So
I think also like the third movie is one of the most expensive movies ever made. I think is it the third one or the fourth one they spent? I think it's the third movie they spent 450 million on, or something mad. It was at the time it was the most money ever spent on a movie. It's phenomenal.
I think it's on Stranger Tides. I think, which is 2011. I think it cost. It's like 350 or something, isn't it? I'm sure it's ridiculous. I'm just looking it up.
It's a really large amount.
376 million on one movie.
I think
They made all the Lord of the Rings on 250.
I think this is around the time when, especially Hollywood cinema, started really what's the word, adapting or cultivating their movies to appeal to the sort of the Asian territories, sort of like, the likes of China and Japan. So a lot of movies that flop in the US or whatever have not load of money spent on them. They absolutely do buku books over there. So you take Pacific Rim, for example. I don't know if you guys have watched that. That is a piss poor movie by numbers. Absolutely destroys it. Destroys the box office.
You are right. And I hadn't thought of it. That's a really, really good point. China, the Chinese cinema going audience, they fucking love an action blockbuster. They just, and if you can make an action blockbuster that the Chinese government won't ban because it's anti-China, that's the key thing these days.
Exactly.
If your movie can be China neutral then and it's actiony and it's big and it's like loud, like the Avengers movies, I'm sure have made all the money in the world in China.
Well,
Because
absolutely. Like you look at
because
Thor:
the
Dark
audience
World.
the audience is different. Thor: Dark World is one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and that
It
made loads
made
of money in China.
bank in China. Yep, exactly. There's actually a really like funny tidbit story on that, because like the promotional sort, like the little sort of stand-up posters you get from movies and stuff you see in cinemas, and like the one they had in China, it made Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth look like lovers rather than brothers. He had his like arm around his like chest and he was behind him. It was.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I can't wait to see this lovely rom-com. Thor and Loki. They're interesting names, aren't they? How cute.
I'd watch it. I've been watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so my bar's obviously right on the floor.
Good lord. Oh, moving on.
Oh, we need to talk about that, Dave.
Yeah.
Is it just sidebar? You can edit this out the episode, Sam. Is the last episode out yet, Ross?
Yes.
I haven't watched it yet, but yeah, we do need to organise time to.
Yeah, good luck with that, guys. That'll be fun. That'll be fun to do.
Oh no,
to listen to.
don't worry, Sam.
Probably.
Don't worry, Sam. It won't take me long.
It won't take long, right? That's good. Let's have anything else we want to talk about. I think this is
clear the table.
I think
Ross,
this is a
we'll start with you.
really fun. We said at the start, it's a fun movie. It's incredibly well made, and like I don't really care for the other ones, but I kind of respect them pursuing it, at least because from the foundations
Why
of this
wouldn't
movie
you?
managed
Why
to
wouldn't
create.
you? Yeah.
Exactly. And the world building, all of the other choices, and that to me is like what's so difficult about filmmaking is that you're faced as you're making movies with just countless different choices to make, whether that's casting or do we shoot today because we've got to go and get this fucking boat, this literal boat on the ocean, and then this story, there's all these choices that are made, and I think just they managed to make all of the right choices all the way through, and so the end result is brilliant because they just got all the things right they needed to. Yeah.
Ross?
I'll go on. I think we've buried the lead quite a bit. I know it was mentioned earlier, but that the fact that this
You're
movie
going to talk about how bad an actor Orlando Bloom is again, I swear to God.
I think we buried the lead a bit. I mean, this Orlando guy. Who? No. We mentioned earlier in an episode, but this movie, this phenomenon stemmed from a theme park ride, and I couldn't help but think as well. I mean, like Pirates of the Caribbean, it's a pretty cool name, but you've got this intricate story and it's well thought out. You don't have to call it Pirates of the Caribbean. You could call it The Curse of the Black Pearl, and then continue that series. But I just thought, how weird that something like that happened. Dave's waving at me.
No, I was waiting for you to finish.
Sorry.
Keep going, Ross.
I was just going to say that they cut go on.
No, I was wrapping
right,
up.
just keep talking.
Yeah, I'm done. Go for it, Dave. Hit me.
I was just going to say that, I think because we aren't American and because we haven't been to Disneyland, maybe the cultural impact of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride isn't something that we're intimate with. And I would certainly be interested to know if you are an American, are we missing something there? Is there because I think Pirates of the Caribbean was one of the biggest rides at Disney World for a long time.
Yeah,
well,
decades.
Amy pointed out to me that that scene where I thought we were going to get a sea shanty where you see the crew as skeletons. Amy was saying that that's what the ride is. Yeah, but that's what the ride is. It's these crew members as skeletons, and then it all stemmed from that. Which
apparently they cut loads of shots from the movie that were basically I don't know the ride very well, but there's a bit of a log flume thing where you go down. In anyway, log flumy thing, and there's all sorts of things on the ride. And apparently, when they did shot the movie, they shot a lot of scenes to be references to the ride. And Verbinski, the director, was basically "Nah, get them the fuck out of here. We're making a movie. We're not fucking doing this."
Trash.
So I kind of get all the ride stuff, and I think, but to be honest, for me, this is just kind of it's just pirate stuff, and the actual story is just it feels really original. I think because we aren't familiar with the ride, that now everything is based on a comic book or
but it doesn't detract from it. It doesn't detract from it. Do you know what I mean? And I don't feel, or you guys probably don't either, that I'm missing out on anything by not experiencing the ride first. Do you know what I mean?
No, totally, yeah. And I think that's the right decision to make. Really, I think that absolutely is. But I can't think of another movie based on a theme park ride, to be honest.
We went to Disneyland a couple of years ago, pre end times, and
The actual Disneyland in
no Paris, Chris, and
Come on, Dave. He's not made of money.
It's fucking expensive. Do you know how much it is to get to actual Florida?
Yes,
it's
that's
ridiculous.
the joke.
Yes,
That's
Ross
the
and
jokes.
Ross and I have been to Disneyland, but we weren't paying to get into. We went to the free bit.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. So we were like, oh, Pirates of the Caribbean, that's not... And then you're walking up, and it's it was in like December, so it was still quite cold, but still it was good fun. And then you go around the corner thinking, well, it's pretty quiet, and you go around the next corner, and you're like, oh, okay, there's the queue, and it just went on for fucking ages. And we went. The longest we waited for was 40 minutes, and it was utter hell to go on the Peter Pan ride because Callum really liked Peter Pan at the time.
Amy and I were talking about, I'll go to Disneyland or whatever, and she was telling me about regaling me with stories about when her and her family went in Florida. And we're like, oh, we went on this Harry Potter ride, and I was like, oh, I can't stand queues. I'm like, oh yeah, we were in a queue for 2 hours. What? Yeah, 2 hours. But there was things in the queue that kept entertaining. I was like, we're not going. We're not going ever. If I have to wait in a queue for 2 hours, I was like, that's like a quarter of your time there. I was like, I'm not spending that in a fucking queue. Are you mad? Sorry,
The only
had to get that out of
tip-
my system.
What's more amazing is the bad connection that I just got, like the occasional snippet of shouting there.
Yeah, but we moved
Perfect.
past today because we don't focus on the problems because we're professional podcasters. All right, that's what we do.
When you're a professional podcaster.
But just before, my only tip, Ross, is if you stay in a Disneyland hotel, one that's run by them, you can go before it opens, and so it's like 2 hours of quiet, and it's amazing. It's actually what Disneyland should be. So I'd recommend
Amazing,
that as a
yeah.
thing if you ever go, Dylan.
Disney, give us money.
Yeah, thank you, Disney,
pay us.
for your benevolent.
Disney, acquire us and put us off the air, please God.
And guys,
I will-
they're not paying us. We're just fans.
Yeah, I will totally not mention the slavery thing again. I promise. Honestly, I really won't mention that. So
There it is, though. There's the next mention.
Or the grooming. Or the
let's wrap up.
Let's wrap up. So I'm going to do my very final thoughts here. Just while we're on Disneyland, I have just had a memory of we went when I was a teenager with my family. The only time we've been, and the best ride we went on was an Indiana Jones ride, and it was a roller coaster, and it's called Indiana Jones Temple of Peril backwards, and you sat facing backwards on this roller coaster. It was absolutely fucking terrifying.
Sounds incredible.
It was great.
Am I the only one who hasn't been to fucking Disneyland? Is that
You're
what
the
I'm
poor, you're the
hearing?
poor one, Ross. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm absolutely the poor one.
And I'm pretty poor, so
Right.
on these movies, I will say that this is a fun like jaunt of like a movie, and I wish the two sequels that came directly after this were a bit more standalone because they're a mess, they're long, they're boring. But actually, if you haven't seen them, and they're all on Disney Plus, the fourth and fifth movies are pretty fun and light because we don't have all the baggage of all these characters. It's basically just Johnny Depp and Jeffrey Rush like palling around. It's like a buddy cop pirate movie, and they're kind of fun. Like not horrible. Probably worth a watch.
And that's what you want, isn't it? That's what you want, and that's what this film delivers. So, well
You're
done.
in one.
You're in one. Right, we'll end it there. Thanks, guys.
Well played, Dave. See you, folks.
Don't mention the slavery. Ooh. Boom, boom.
Dave just.
I was just waiting for one of you to watch. Power down.
Well
After
done.
show shit show. Wow.
Yeah, welcome.
Things have
Does
devolved.
that show up on our
after last week.
YouTube?
Yep.
Yes, it does, Ross.
That'll
Because it's aptly
affect,
named. Because
that'll
we get
affect
to
the algorithms. I'm not going to lie.
Well, they won't better tell that, will they?
Although,
Surely
to
not.
be fair, we've mentioned slavery and rape quite a number of times in this.
But
Yeah,
we weren't-
sure.
we weren't joking about those things. We were legitimately concerned about this film's lack of.
Yeah, Sam was concerned at this film's lack of those things.
Yeah. I'm not thinking anyone here
He
is
wanted to
advocating
see- he
fucking
wanted to see-
slavery or rape. Jesus Christ.
Sam was in this movie.
I wasn't.
That's actually, Dave, you're onto something there. That Sam did say it.
I think my
So this
point. I
movie
think
was
my
great.
point
But
was.
what I would love as me, Sam, is more rape and more slavery, please.
I think my point is that this film. To be serious for a moment. There is something like of this.
Sam has a job and would rather not lose it.
Saving my employment. There is a thing about like how this movie and probably all of these type of movies set around this time, like it's just totally ignored.
Gloss
It's
over.
The governor is 1000% a slave owner. Like he has to be. That's why he's a governor. That's why he's
The word is whitewashed.
Yeah. And there is. I think there's Zoe Saldana. There's a boy who follows around. Look, in a very, very weird way, he follows around one of the Port Authority guys. And there's a couple of the pirates. You think, Christ, like there's no one in
one
a
shot as well where. Sorry, so I think I'm just catching up in the sync there. There's that shot where they go in the boat and they're going underwater, which is a cool shot we didn't mention, by the way. Right before that, there's a panning shot and you see a little boy, a black boy, and he's in a straw hat and and he's fishing. I'm probably like imposing this image in my head, but I'm pretty sure it's like a cork pipe, and I'm like, that can't be right.
Yeah. It's a little bit Huck Finn, isn't it? The whole thing.
Yes, that's what it was.
There's some stuff, and there is some more problematic stuff as we go forward in this series as well.
Oh, awesome!
Again, quite a lot of whitewashing, quite a lot of a lot of black characters.
Are you confusing though?
Stereotypes.
Are you confusing that film when where Johnny Depp played an Indian? American. Is that in this? Is that a thing?
I mean, if we're going to talk, it's Lone Ranger, and he plays Tonto. Tonto.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, if we're going to talk about that, you need to mention Scarlett Johansson playing a Japanese character in Ghost in the Shell, and then she defended that based in she fought back against it, and then she did an apology, and then there was another movie. Oh wait, then there was another movie then, and I can't remember what the creed or nationality was, and there was backlash against it, and she basically went, as an actor, I should be able to play whatever role I want. Like, oh, that is not the response. That is
My question is, why is nobody getting after Rob Schneider about all of his myriad?
Because who gives a fuck about Rob Schneider?
I think we're leading that charge, Dave. I think we seem to
crusade.
We seem to
put Rob Schneider in prison for his crimes. Yes, or at the very least ban him from future movies.
Yeah,
I'm David Newell.
Rob Schneider gets dragged into every movie.
I support this message.
I'm just surprised it took you an hour and 27 minutes to get there. To be honest, I thought you would have shoehorned his lack of appearance in this movie as a. I can't believe he's not in this film.
When I started slating Orlando Bloom, and Dave goes, and while we're talking about shitheads,
we're talking about people who can't fucking act. Totally.
Dear. Right, let's end our shit show here before we start to. Before we talk any more about race.
Yeah, where we have absolutely no
definitely
right.
take this offline. Definitely. Before Sam gets his manifesto out.
It's too late. Right. Thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.